Hi there YouTube, Mark Verheer here. Yeah, hooked up my PlayStation 4 controller again, and I'm actually playing PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 1 games within the PlayStation 3 emulator RPCS3. Let's go check out the application. Whoops. My applications, because it's the Intel binary, but it's still a pretty decent experience. I may actually put myself in there as well, like so. So, for example, and I'm not sure if it's going to impact recording it with OBS, if it's going to impact the performance of the PlayStation 3, but no, this seems to be running full speed. So Detuned is a weird demo, an experience. It works. Joint Strike. And I can do it full speed, but now you can actually see my little screen thing. So this is a shooter. Very easy to run. Very minimal frame time differences. And yeah, this actually, let's see. This is actually running Westmere type, Intel thingy. So it's like Rosetta, which is a Westmere CPU. That's actually running the recompiled PlayStation code. So yeah, it's the fact that it actually runs at all is actually quite amazing. Now, the audio may actually be overpowering here. Let's try to get about that. You can have it full screen. Pretty weird, isn't it? So let's see. Afterburner climax. Whoops. Stop. Afterburning climax. Open system. Why does it want to use system accessibility options? Yeah, sure. Remember, this is running on an M1 Mac. Yeah, sure. It's just running. It's just bloody running. Now this is something interesting. This didn't used to work before, but you actually have PlayStation 1 Classics booting. So it's PlayStation 1 emulation within the PlayStation 3 emulator that is running on the M1, running Intel code, which is running through Rosetta, and the fact that it runs as it does is just mind-blowing. So PlayStation 1 games running on layers with a PlayStation 3 controller. Now, Ape Escape uses 2 analog sticks, like it says here, mando analogico. And I'm not sure if it defaults to the analog sticks, but let's see. PlayStation titles are always very ditted. Oh gosh, it's the American of the Juego Nuevo versión español. But the intro movies just run. It's running 60 frames per second. On the top you actually see some blue bars. That's actually the level that the M1 cores are. This is Klika Pro. Let me see. You should be able to change. Oh, that's the monkey. That one you have to catch with your little net. I remember this being one of the first. Oh, and vibration also works. Really weird. So Assault Heroes, another PlayStation 3 title, native PlayStation 3 title. Twin stick shooter, quite interesting. I could do that full screen. So yeah, I mean, I remember like over half a year ago, the RPCS3 emulator was ported to Mac, and I tried it back then, and it was just very slow, but the way it performs right now is just insanity. So the Rosetta CPU emulation is sufficient enough for PlayStation 3 emulation to run. There's no native M1 port yet, and I would be really surprised how that would run. Now I believe it uses all the M1 cores, so the efficiency cores as well as the yeah, this just runs full speed. You know, this is just doing it. What else? Astro Tripper. Now, some of these games I haven't run before, so it needs to compile the PPU modules. Oh, you can actually see that it's doing the Westmere object. So it's Rosetta does an older, it's like a Core 2 Duo type, Core 2 Quad type emulator. I believe Astro Tripper is like very similar to a game on the original Xbox. It's a twin stick shooter. I'm not sure if I am to avoid it. It's not running full speed. It's and I'm not sure why the analog sticks doesn't work, but yeah, this is not perfect. This glitches a bit, flickers a bit. Bacterius, I've not tried this. This is supposed to be compatible, but let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to go quickly over all these games. Mind you, I I have all these games for real on my PC, on my PlayStation 3. I've just amassed a ton of PSN games, and yeah. So Japanese version. I believe this only came out in Japan. What doesn't work is PlayStation 2 ports. It gives an error when you try to load this in. I don't think this has... Oh, this is weird. X for OK. X for start. So I believe this is a twin stick shooter. You're basically bacteria floating around in a petri dish. And I have to just... Oh, this is a special thing. So yeah, I mean, this is much like the other game. And you basically just have to shoot and consume and go absorb the special versions. I believe, yeah, these glowing things you just need to assimilate. I guess those improve your health and your abilities. And you see the cells, they divide and grow bigger. Well, they don't necessarily divide. So yeah, I mean, back in the 90s, the biological theme within shooters, like in R-Type and stuff, was a thing. This is actually taking it to a whole nother level, you know. It's like the biology theme is the game. So this is, well, I'm just going to quickly show. This is a very addictive game that I play a ton. I have this game on just about any system that I own, where it's a port off. I believe there's even a port for it on the 8-bit computers, a homebrew. Endless. That's just very interesting. What I like about this is that the music is actually quite nice, and I like the combinations and just all the explosions and stuff. The sound is very nice. Blast Factor, this is a demo version, but this is supposed to be compatible. Let's see. Another twin stick shooter. Has a lot of special effects, a lot of explosions. This really is another one of these biological type of games, which I'm quite partial to. But yeah, I mean, PlayStation 3 emulation on the M1 MacMini is very possible. Just hook up a PlayStation 4 controller over Bluetooth and you're off. Yeah, and this, I didn't run this before, so you can actually see, you know, the first time you click one of these games, it's going to compile the PPU modules. And a lot of the easier to run games I've amassed over here. I'm not sure about the high-end games on the PlayStation 3, whether or not they would actually run on the M1 Mac, but this seems to work pretty well. So you can actually see how long it takes, and this is only the first time, and actually the first time you actually run the game and shaders need to be compiled, you actually see yeah, this is just insanity in a bottle, you know, just license agreements first, multiple pages. Some of the more modern games, you know, some of them have actually 20 of these pages. Just insanity. Theachix sound. Blast Factor start demo. This may actually not run full speed, but it's a nice twin stick shooter, and as, yeah, this just hangs in compiling shaders and stuff. So I guess a lot of the lighting effects that they use over here are just a tad too much for the emulator. Let's stop. Braid. Yeah, I played that first on the Xbox 360. I believe this was one of the first indie titles on the consoles that I was aware of. A very nice platformer with a special thing. You can actually see the hourglass. You can move back and forth in time, and the whole game is linear yet non-linear. It's a very interesting game, and of course I don't think I have any physical version of that. It's digital only, and I have it on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Xbox One, left stick to move. Yeah, this is not a high-end game, so this will work fine, you know, on the PlayStation emulator. I'm not gonna go bust. Oh, this is another one. Bust to move, PlayStation Classic. Let's see if this actually runs. That is weird. Actually, the PlayStation 2 emulator, RPCS2, no, not PCSX2, actually, it also is compatible with a couple of PlayStation 1 titles. It's not running them well yet, but it's because bits of the hardware on the PlayStation 2 are actually it's a software-hardware combination. I believe one of the sound processors is actually a PlayStation. One of the sound processors, one of the I/O processors on the PlayStation is actually PlayStation 2 is actually the PlayStation 1. Yeah. That this actually is running with a sustained 60 frames per second, pretty much, without any discernible lag. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just fast enough to just provide you with an experience that just is capable of producing the frames, you know, within how many milliseconds? 15 milliseconds or something like that. So so it's the D-pad only, and this is a version that has this nice balancing thing, which makes it a little more interesting. Yeah, this just works. Whoops. Crash Bandicoot. I've not tried this before, so let's see if this actually works. I mean, this game is a difficult game. I mean, if this runs, the compatibility is actually pretty good, because the programmers really had to do a ton of stuff to actually get this to work on the hardware. I believe, yeah, there's a very nice video of one of the programmers actually explaining how they got it to work, and it's some very nifty stuff. They actually reboot the game within the game or something like that to bypass a lot of the libraries or whatever. So yeah, so they actually are programming this on the bare metal hardware. So I mean, yeah, and I guess, you know, I'm not sure whether or not on the PlayStation they had to tweak their emulator. I think their emulator is contained within the BIOS. Now, this doesn't run with the analog stick. This is a digital D-pad only. I do notice that the speed varies ever so slightly, and controlling it is a bit laggy. So this is not as this is not as immediate as the other one. You can actually see by the frame times that are a bit different, and I think the slight variations in it, yeah. And Crash, he seems to walk on just a bit further than you intend to, but that this works is just insane. And I'm not sure if I've seen people showing off PlayStation 1 games running within the RPCS3 emulator yet, but I may have a premiere. But yeah, it works. And I had to manually download the compatibility list, but it says no results found. So I guess people have not sent in Crazy Taxi, basically the Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2 port, Sega games. Not very difficult. Most of the Sega games actually run pretty well on the emulator. We just had, let me see, utilize autosave. Oh, this is weird. The menu is messed up. Oh, well, the menu is messed up. So I guess there's, yeah. They stated it was perfectly playable. Yeah, they said it was perfectly playable. Well, there is a, whoops, I'm just gonna stop this game because it has a lot of music in it. That may be copyright. Daytona USA, another Sega game. This used to flicker quite a bit before. 50 frames for the most part. There are some dips. It may have to do with, you know, hardware initialization, or I believe in game we're pretty solid. Load this data, sure. Press start.
Please select a race.
Please select a race.
Please choose manual.
Yeah, this feels very accelerator on.
3, 2,
1.
go!
This is a very fast game. Let's see how I do. Oh. I'm just all over the place. So I guess one could call this the ultimate Daytona port.
Time extension.
Of course, it's very necessary to have the most inner bit of the curb. This is where you brake and yeah, I have a lot of cars to overtake yet. 27 of now let's, yeah, this is gonna go on forever, but yeah, this runs pretty well. Fez, I still need to install some of the updates to the games, but ooh, I believe my my controller just died. I needed to recharge it. So yeah, you know, this may actually be a good way to stop the recording and see whether or not I succeeded. So yeah, very interesting. Well, of course, have another controller, a blue one, and I hook that up. So let's go to this setting, fire up the emulator yet again, and where were we? Crash Bandicoot Daytona Fez. So let's see. Fez is a very interesting game. It's a 2D platformer with 3D aspects, where you actually, when you rotate the screen and the perspective changes, you get to jump and do things within that perspective. So things that are not really possible within the 3D world, will be possible in the 2D world, and it's a very interesting game. I believe the developer of the game was a bit troubled, and the game did receive some updates, not the version that I'm running here, but yeah, there's an interesting video on it actually that describes a bit of the things that were happening when this game was being developed, and I love the game. It's a very nice pixel retro indie type game, and I believe it only exists in digital download form. It's available on the PC, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, Xbox, and I believe also the Switch. I'm not sure. Android? I'm not sure. Yeah, it's one of the bigger games, so it needs to compile a fair few PPU modules. It seems that the M1 chip, even though not all the cores are equal, some of them run their efficiency cores, so they run at a lower maximum frequency speed, which of course is something that the PlayStation 3 didn't have to deal with. All the cores, all the PPUs that were available to it were basically running the same speed, I guess. So yeah, I'm not sure if the emulator would choose the lowest common denominator or something, or how the scheduling of all the processes takes place, but yeah, it's actually quite interesting that it just runs, and perhaps these more simple games actually don't use too much. Yeah, I'm not connected. Oh, it seems that I have to pair the controller. It's not that the controller really dual shock, refresh. Yeah, it doesn't. Oh, yeah, I don't want to. So why doesn't it want to work? Oh, pat number 2. Oh yeah, okay. So it has the IDs of these various controllers. It's a second controller. Oh well. That's a bit annoying. And now, oh. So yeah, perhaps I should put little stickers on there, and then I may have to define these controllers on various emulators. I hope not, actually. Otherwise, I'll just use one controller and just keep it loaded. Start new game. And I'm not sure. I don't think in version 1 the game is actually completely solvable. It actually needs the update. But yeah, you just wake up like any other RPG in your bed. You have to wake up and you have to find specific keys and stuff to in order to evolve. Go through the door, and you basically get thought what the game is about and how the graphics work and how you rotate the world. So things that are next to one another could actually be in front of one another on the other perspective. But yeah, this does seem to run full speed. Walk up to the mailbox. Not sure where the mailbox is. Read the mail. Is this the mailbox? This seems to be yeah. At the top of the village, Geezer. So I'm able to climb. I'm able to climb stairs and climb the ivy that is growing up the okay, and now if I rotate the world, and I forgot how to rotate the world, still probably it's going to be explained later on. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not reviewing the game, you know, it's just, it runs. Final Fantasy, this is a PlayStation 1 Classic, and the Final Fantasy game to play. This on the PlayStation really brought Final Fantasy into a different experience. It was vast. I believe it's like 3 or 4 discs, and yeah, it's just a huge game. And to be able to play it, oh, that is not supposed to happen. Oh, it may be a bit of a video thing, I'm not sure. Let's see. Officially this doesn't, this is not in the compatibility database, so yeah, it may actually be some sort of fade and glow and interlaced graphic thing that trips up the PlayStation implementation on the PlayStation 3. There are some slight glitches in the sound. You can actually see the frame time is spiking a bit, but the frame rate it's very minute. Might actually possible be to be tweakable new game if you do something with the buffers within the emulator, but I'm just using the RPCS3 emulator with the default settings. Yeah, so this video is not liked that much. It also has issues with drawing the entire screen, possibly, I'm not sure. But of course, the PlayStation 3 emulator, it supports up to, well, I'm not sure how many controllers the PlayStation 3 actually supports multiplayer like. I mean, virtually limitless probably, because they are all hooking up over Bluetooth. But of course, it will have a different ID for the various controllers, so you can actually have multiplayer couch co-op games. Well, I mean, it runs. I'm not sure how it will run, but this is this is taking forever. So yeah, outside of the scope. Oh, yeah, outside of the scope of this game, but flow. It says it's playable. So let's see. Another one of these bioorganic games. This is like, well, it reminds me of Plankton actually. If you float around in Plankton and collect slightly bigger entities and just evolve into something that is more capable. That's what I remember, but. Yeah, so it may actually be that if I decide not to go capture with OBS, that the Final Fantasy game, for example, would not have the stutters that it is actually exhibiting at the moment. So guest utilization, so it actually is utilizing the PlayStation 3 guest to the max because of the compilation. The host PPU, SPU, RSX is used between 13, 20, 50, percent. So it gives you a sense of how much impact the game actually has on the host PC and how much it's taxing the virtual PlayStation 3. Now, I was hoping that the 6-axis controller of the PlayStation 3 or 4 would actually work with the... oh, it does! Oh, that is cool. So that would make games like Flower very playable. But oh yeah, this is cool. So yeah, basically you just float around. The sound again is crackling a bit, but that may actually be due to the fact that I'm emulating or capturing at the same time, and you can actually move up and down different layers. Once you, yeah, it's like you're floating around in this big petri dish. This is, you can speed up. Let me see. Yeah. The one with yeah, you get to, oh look, and now you are moving to a different layer. Oh, and there's a different one that may decide to eat you. It's like it's like, yeah, it's like watching a big petri dish under a microscope with a huge magnification. It's actually quite an interesting game, and the fact that the 6-axis controller works is actually quite interesting. Flower is in game. Okay, well, Flower is by the same company that also utilizes 6-axis control. You basically flow around like petals and pollen, like a cloud of pollen, and you just pollinate the various flowers. You just float around, and you get to move to a different area the moment you have pollinated all the flowers. And it's also a game where you float around and you just, yeah, it's a very experiential game with which is actually quite mindful. Now again, I have not run this before, so it's compiling a bit. And it says it's in game, so it might not actually be very playable or exhibit severe glitches. I'm very curious whether or not the 6-axis would actually work. Often with these games that go in game, they have severe issues with the speed and the utilization of the PPU and SPU. So I guess the emulator does. Okay, so you move, you tilt it, and you don't turn it. So compiling shaders. Let me see. Yeah, it does. It doesn't respond very well to the controller. It's not. So this makes the game unplayable. So that may actually be why it's in game, but it doesn't respond to the controller. Galaga Legions, that is Galaga on steroids. I believe this also draws a humongous amount of enemies on the screen, so this may actually be quite taxing for this emulator on this specific hardware with the OBS capture. And the OBS capture, it doesn't use software, so it's actually using the CPU to render it. So it's not the best way to capture the video. Press the start button. Oh, here it also. Oh, it may actually be that the emulator, that flower wasn't responding, because this is also not responding because of the 1 or 2 player. So the pad 2 disconnected, pad 1. Oh, okay. So let's go back to flower then. So I guess when you change controllers, it may actually be trip this one up. It just takes the PlayStation 3 4 pad that is hooked up. Actually, it takes it as the first. Not sure. I'm just verbally incontinent. So let's see if it will respond to the to motion. Oh, it does. It does. Oh wow. Hold any button. This was one of the first motion control games I played on the PlayStation 3. Actually, possibly one of the first games that I played on the PlayStation 3. This showed off the 6 axis. The PlayStation 3 is so old that its controllers now they have the same thing that is happening to the PlayStation 2 controllers. That a lot of the rubber on it is actually turning sticky. So I'm this petal, or this petal, and I just gently float around towards. Oh yeah, and I can press the X to just float, and then you just go and visit all the flowers. Some of them are in clusters, and as you can see, there is some issues with the grass being rendered. So yeah, I mean it's interesting that it runs like it does, but it's, you know, there's issues with the grass being rendered, and frame times are just all over the place. So yeah, it may actually be down to the various cores not keeping up. I'm not sure. Curious how it would run on a system with cores that were identical. So, Galaga Legions. Well, I'm happy that actually the controller, I think when the first controller died, it of course had the ID of the first controller still in the emulator, and the second was paired, and then it had the second, but then probably macOS removes the idle controller and this gets number 1. Not sure. Start. Yeah, this already is slower than it. I mean, the menu should be a solid 60 frames per second, and I guess the way the screen is drawn, and I believe you use the triggers. Yeah, this should be a solid 60 frames per second, and it's not. There's just too many stuff going on the screen, so yeah, this is not what it's supposed to run like. So yeah, this just shows that some games with this emulator may actually run perfect, while others are just way too slow. A lot of stuff actually works. This is TurboGrafx 16 running. So Virtual Console titles, they use emulation, and actually a fair few of the homebrew emulators for the PlayStation 3 actually run well within the emulator. I've used RetroArch and some standalone emulators, and they just work. But it's a bit pointless, really, to run emulators within emulators. But at the same time, it's actually very interesting to see how they run. Because if the emulation is perfect and fast enough to not introduce a ton of lag, then the game remains playable. And this is just a very playable version of it. I'm using the analog stick, and now I'm using the digital stick, and yeah, there's no, I'll be able to play this because it's fast. Frame times are very similar, and of course this on a CRT with the original console would be better. It would be more immediate, but yeah, perhaps. Yeah, as you can see, I mean, I'm not too shabby at it, but it's perfectly playable. You don't instantly die. This is interesting. This is the iconic game, Gran Turismo, the iconic game that made me get a PlayStation, the gray unit. It made video games cool back in the day. It made it. I was still in college, I believe, and yeah, medical school, and I was 20 something, and it was cool. Select the language, English, quick race, and possibly turn down the volume of the music a tad. And let's see how it actually runs. There are some, well, it's loading and stuff, so I guess I/O takes a toll, but yeah, frame times are spiking a bit. And I'm curious if this actually defaults to analog. No, it doesn't. Can I? No. Oh gosh, I pressed the guide button and whoa, where is it? Where is it? I'm bumping into yeah. I pressed the guide button on the PlayStation 3 controller, and it for some reason always goes to this folder where there's this chess program. So curious how to set the analog control in this game. There should be a way to do it, but this is not a very, how do you say that, a very enjoyable experience, because frame times are all over the place. And of course I've played this a ton, so it's, I mean, it does do force feedback, but it's not fluid, it's it has a very varying frame rate. I mean, it is running full speed, and it's easy to control. Let's see. I mean, it's playable. I mean, I can play this, but it's not like this ultra smooth experience that you remember from the PlayStation, the original PlayStation console. But the fact that PlayStation originals actually run within the emulator basically shows us how compatible it is actually beginning to get. Journey. Yeah, I'm not gonna run everything. Iron Assault. Yeah, Iron Assault. Yeah, that's also a twin stick shooter. And I was actually hoping that a lot of these twin stick shooters would actually work well. But I guess if there's too much screen candy, eye candy going on, it just totally wrecks the speed at which the emulation runs. Yeah, I'm actually surprised that it works. And again, I mean, we were experiencing quite a severe heat wave, and now it's like 24 degrees Celsius, so there's no heat wave anymore. But yeah, with all the things going on in the world and the price of energy, it's actually quite prudent to just use low-powered devices. And I was using a ton of NUCs and Raspberry Pis and stuff, but I remembered I had this M1 Mac in the study. I retired it from the game room because, well, it wasn't very good at playing games, at least up till just a short while ago. And it's compiling shaders and stuff. Move your ship with the left stick and move the stick in the direction in which you want to shoot. Oh wow. So this is not full speed, I guess, because of the huge amount of, oh wow, this is actually a very interesting game. Huge amount of items drawn on the screen, but this also seems to be I guess the way the frame rate does, I think this is a 60 frames per second game originally, but for some reason it just doesn't want to. Oh, what is that? Carry power. Oh, okay, so updates. I just destroy the ship. Get the power update. Yeah, but it's not really playable because it's running. It's running a bit slow, I guess. Yeah. Journey. Oh, that was playable, but not on the M1 Mac. So there's quite a few games that will be classed as playable, but might actually overtask the M1. But it does. This video does give an impression of how games actually will run. Now this says in-game. Again, already the frame rate shows this should be 60 probably, or 30 of that game company. So I mean, this has a lot of it's a great game actually. This also is a very nice experience, but yeah, it uses a lot of lighting effects. You start out in a sand-filled world, very far drawing distance. It does its thing at 10 frames per second. Frame times are, yeah. Oh, look, you see the sand. It's actually quite interesting to see something not working perfect on the PlayStation 3 emulator, because a lot of the stuff that you do try actually runs pretty much perfect. Yeah, I think it's time for me to go grab some lunch. Yeah, this is just geometry going all over the place. Probably some of the statues are drawn on top of the screen. There's this arch thing going on. So yeah, but amazing game, but not like this. Still, this might end up running perfectly eventually. There's a great multiplayer in this game. You would actually encounter individuals like yourself, and yeah, you can turn the so using a PlayStation controller, PlayStation 4 or 3 controller actually is quite mandatory. I'll stop the recording and I'll continue to record running some of the other games in a while. first I'm gonna have lunch. Okay, here we are back again. So, Killzone. Killzone is playable. So this is a reprogrammed edition, because this originally was a PlayStation 2 title, I believe. Let's go full screen. So yeah, I mean, Westmere, that is just many generations before the Lake CPUs. I think this is around 2010 or something like that. So it's the Core 2 Duo, Core Quad, and yeah, Intel CPUs haven't evolved for quite a bit, actually, for about a decade, I guess. And instruction set additions like AVX2 and stuff were introduced later. But yeah, I expect this to be slow for some reason, but it might not be, because the original on PlayStation, of course, is just probably single-threaded. Hellgast Assault. Let me see. Yeah, select Templar. Pretty iconic. The opponents, they have goggles, and they are orange or yellow or something like that. So starts out with some sort of World War II type of yeah, this is yeah, this is slow. I guess there's a lot of geometry that needs to be drawn. Let me see what's. You can actually see the goggles they wear, and they fall. Reload. So yeah, it doesn't look too shabby, but it's not running full speed. So this is not an open world. Look at these goggles, pretty cool. Let's reload. I mean, it's playable still. I mean, it's you wouldn't want to have this right stick to look around. Yeah, I was already looking around. Oh look. So your visor turns into something of a red color, and of course you need to prevent them. Mission objective added. Okay, so we are going to be walking around. A part of your health regenerates over here. So yeah, I may actually go back to this and play this again, but yeah, this is not running full speed. I guess this actually would run at 30 frames per second. Because it doesn't really go above, and it's a complex game, and it probably would be something that runs at 30 frames per second. A lot of the, I believe the PlayStation, Xbox 360 generation, they were the first generation, to my knowledge, that really had games not run at the default refresh rate of the TV standard they were used at, so like 25 or 50 frames per second, or yeah, 50 frames per second, 60 frames per second. I believe PlayStation and also Nintendo 64, they had games with lower frame rates. So I guess that's actually the first polygon, the moments that polygons got introduced and bitmaps were sort of not the main focus. I guess that's when lower frame rate gaming was actually introduced. And I myself am quite partial to consistent frame rates, and I love higher frame rates more than I love resolution. So I can, if something is ultra smooth, running at 60 plus frames per second, and it's like in 320 by 200, I can still enjoy it. So possibly because I'm a retro gamer, but there's people that can tolerate 15 frames per second in 4K. You know, they just love it. They love the resolution. They prefer the resolution over frame rates, and I'm frame rate. So this would actually normally run at 60 frames per second, but again, this is using a lot of So this is using a lot of shader compilation time right now. I'm actually surprised this actually runs at 60, may dip. It seems the shader compilation does interfere with the frame times. The moment that pops up, you see actually spikes in frame time and dips in frames. But yeah, this is basically a scene demo running compiled within the PlayStation libraries and stuff, like a sanctioned original demo. And it seems like Czech or Middle European developers that created this. MacOS Intel sounds very German. Yeah, but it's actually quite interesting that Michael Witasek, that's Czech, might be, or Polish. A lot of fog effects. Molinsky. It's actually quite interesting how the shader compilations don't seem to interfere with the objects introduced on the screen. You know, it's not like geometry is produced and then later filled in with textures that are still needed to be rendered. But the controller is actually violently shaking. It remains to be a 60 frames per second. Might be some audio clicks. Very ominous looking. Yeah, they're using low quality textures with with one of these interpolation things that you often saw in emulators. You know, like the rounded edges with the various colors. So I guess it's using a very low quality textures. Wow. Some sort of cloud with dark entity like a cloud of bats or something like that, or a big worm. Floating flower. There's quite a fair bit of geometry shown. They get away with only drawing the objects in the front because the back, it's just a flat image with the same style. So it's amazing looking, like these cranes. Whoops. Now there's this image of a dog that appears at some point. love those clouds, like cumulus clouds. Actually, for a first time run, this isn't bad. I've seen it performing worse on Windows on one of the earlier builds, but it had a lower number of cores. I think it was an i7 2600 or 3770 or something like that. So it has 4 cores, 8 threads, and this of course has 8 threads, 8 cores, with 4 of them being efficiency cores. And I'm not sure how Rosetta actually will Rosetta scale on all cores. Is Rosetta some sort of kernel module, and is the load just spread around all cores, or are just 4 cores used? I'm very curious. It seems like, oh, there's a cat. Yeah, the cat looks, I don't know, the dog looks a bit clumsy, the cat looks very present, very focused, and the dog is just flailing around. Whoops. Yep, the dog is barking at the, yeah, well, this demo goes on forever, but it's actually running very well. At one point I was afraid it was not going to be running that well, because of the frame rates in the menu. I may have gone to full screen a bit too early, because I'm not sure whether or not this actually runs. It seems to have hung itself. Oh, it's still compiling. That's weird. I would have expected a screen like this to be shown, but now we can go full screen. So this is one of the many Namco Classic recompilations. And I'm a sucker because I have this on just about any system. Retro gaming, Namco games, they're all over the place. Namco Museum. So Pac-Man, Xevious. Let's see how Pac-Man runs. Game starts. Basically, this is not the arcade Pac-Man, I guess. No, this is the arcade Pac-Man. In earlier on earlier consoles, they would have this lower resolution, reformatted. Because basically this is just the Tati screen, identical to the arcade. But you on the original PlayStation or the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube, you would have these redesigned graphics to. And I don't think that is actually the real arcade code running. This seems to be, but yeah. So yeah, Outrun, of course, Outrun. I'm a sucker for Outrun. So let's not do the 15 course super long thing, but let's see if when I just select a single race or just the regular Outrun, a single. And then I am quite partial to the Dino 246, and then just the Outrun mode, and Risky Ride I'm quite partial to. So this probably runs at 720p. A lot of the PlayStation 3 titles actually run at 720p. And then it crashed. Timed out. Yeah, it timed out. Okay. Let's run that again. Now, this could actually be related to the fact that I'm capturing this also, and that not all cores are created equal. Let's see. Because I've played this before, and it ran beautifully. like 60 frames per second. Here we have the old crash information. Oh, we could have seen what was going on. Just doing the exact same thing as before. Yeah, now it does work. So yeah, I mean the way this emulator works, it's actually quite interesting. Perhaps not too dissimilar to Rosetta, but then not real time. It pre-compiles all the executables. There is, it's very interesting because the frame times are, when I'm capturing this with OBS, the frame times are actually a little bit more over the place with a solid 60 frames per second. But I guess it does influence the output or the execution of the emulator just a tad. And what I find very amazing is how Rosetta is integrated into the system. It's on a very low level because you can actually have all sorts of system utilities that are not coded in ARM that still work on the macOS. And yeah, just for that bit of software to work as it does is just mind-blowing, especially when when you think about the fact that this Rosetta code is actually translating this to ARM, possibly in a very similar fashion that this emulator is using. It may actually write to disk. I believe I've read somewhere that Rosetta actually does write bits of code to disk, caches it, and loads it in to execute. So it does, of course, need to do some recompilation. Possibly not all on the fly. It may actually store bits of compilated code. I'm not sure, but that's how I would do it. But yeah, this is just a very consistent running game. And I'm just not gonna do a complete race, but yeah, this is just awesome. PSOne, another PS1 Classic. Yeah, I've not seen this before on YouTube. It may be a well-documented feature, but it could also be just a coincidental occurrence, you know, with the emulator becoming more and more perfect, that the PlayStation 1 functionality just happens, because that's how PlayStation 1 functionality actually got introduced with the RPCS3 emulator, partly because the PlayStation chips are actually used as a controller chip and on the PlayStation 2. So yeah, if you do emulate the hardware and the BIOS contains PlayStation 1 BIOS, yeah, it you know, the more complete the emulator becomes, it's bound to actually include yeah, this is running at 60 frames per second, I believe, quite consistently. PSOne. Yeah, it's just like one of these runners. And you just continue. Whoops! You just continue running, avoiding the sewer guys. and possibly sliding underneath. Yeah, I forgot which button that is, but yeah, I mean, PlayStation 1 titles do run. I would not solely use this as a main, this emulator as a main PlayStation 1 title, PlayStation 1 emulator, because it only will work with the PlayStation 1 titles that are specifically packaged in the way that they work within the PlayStation 3 framework. I've tried to see if I could load in or put a disc in the emulator, you know, PlayStation 1 image into the emulator. I mean, might work, right? But yeah. So Pierre Solar, I backed this back in the day. I have the Mega Drive version, and it's a very nice RPG, very much worth playing, and it's cool that this runs on the PlayStation emulator. This shooter is quite nice. I believe this also is out on the Switch and possibly PC, so I mean, yeah, compiling PPU modules. Yeah, it makes the video a fair bit longer, that's true, but also you'll get an idea of how it just goes, you know, starting a game for the first time. This only happens the first time. It stores these and also the shaders in a folder, and it will just load them in the moment the game is started. So it checks whether or not these assets already have been generated. Of course, it does use a fair bit of disk space, but not as much as you'd think, because only the executable code is being treated that way, and compiled shader sets are not the same as all the assets that are the game itself. So it's not like, you know, you have multiple times the amount of storage needed in order to run the games at all, or something like that. So R-Type 1 and 2, reimagined, rehashed, increased graphics. These are among my favorite shooters, so to have them in this reimagined shape is actually quite interesting. Now, without a disk light and the flashing loading and no way of indication seeing how far the load actually is or how long it will be, is actually something I find very unnerving. You know, it is like, did the system hang? We don't know. Is it still loading in? If I press escape, would it start? If I press a button on the gamepad, would it start? Let's see what's happening underneath. Look, there's files that refuse to open. So let's R-Type dimension. It says it's playable, so it may actually be down to just a glitch, you know, one of the bits of the game, one of the PPUs not kicking in. So it does help to check out the look, now it goes. Yeah, it does help to check and not just think, oh, it'll be alright, because you'll be waiting a long time. So R-Type, very nice console cabinet. So single player, infinite mode, endless play, 3D. Oh look, you have a new set of graphics. You have the old graphics, and yeah, this probably will be running at 60 frames per second. And now again, will it have loaded all the assets? Yes. Infinite mode. Complete all stages to post your score. Now this, usually I'm not a big fan of, you know, these old games with reimagined high-end graphics. I'm still in two minds about this. I mean, this looks amazing, and they've really gone to town in creating the moving backgrounds and stuff. This actually is a very high-end, new graphics, reimagined version. And this is actually very tolerable, but you also can have these just minimally skinned type of graphics, and yeah, they aren't as nice, but this actually is quite interesting. Let's see if I can. The collision detection is not too strict, I find. Yeah, these arms, this bit, when I saw this, the graphics in magazines back in the day, it's actually quite interesting. The archetypical, I guess the 90s shooter, and I guess this actually makes it less organic and more like you're invading a ship from the film movie Aliens. Yeah, let's destroy those orbs. Whoops. And the little head. Oh well, this works rather well. So R-types, that's the PlayStation Classic variant. And here we have the PlayStation BIOS. The PlayStation Portable does have bits of PlayStation, the PlayStation 3 Emulator and the BIOS do contain a PlayStation Portable emulator. So at some point the emulator might also, you know, make it possible to use downloadable PSN, PSP games or something like that. But insert coins. So yeah, this is what on the older consoles. Yeah, this is basically the arcade and Amiga versions, and it's a different game. The 3D imagined graphics, I mean, it runs at a very different pace. This is a lot faster. The screen is more cramped. So yeah, and of course I'm much more used to playing this version, as you can see, than the 3D reimagined Dimensions version. But this is just an amazing game. Playing this on the Game Boy, that is something. I mean, it's one of the cards that I got on the Game Boy. You know, I had Tetris, I got R-Type, and I got Gradius or Nemesis. A lot of shooters actually on the original Game Boy. Ridge Racer Type 4. It doesn't run. This doesn't run in the backwards compatibility mode on the PlayStation 2 emulator, but it might actually run here. So it's the American version. Hopefully the analog sticks are just selected by default. It's a great racer. It's it's just a wonderful racer, and this also made owning a PlayStation back in the day something that suited grown-ups also. And it's not for all, you know. If you like your realistic racers, then, well, this is a typical Japanese racer with a lot of drifting. And this may be very irritating to people, but I just don't want to expose bits of the story, so I'm just continuously pressing the start and the OK buttons just to navigate through these menus as quickly as possible. But it may sound very irritating. I have the microphone a little ways off, so that those joystick noises may not be too obvious. But this is not running full speed. Where is it? There's some dips. Okay, so it's not defaulting to the analog stick, and it is slow. There's a fair bit of lag. Yeah, I think there's about 400 millisecond delay. Perhaps even a little less, but yeah, it's much more laggy than the frame rate and the screen time show. Well, there's 50. Yeah, it's. I think it's about twice as long. I mean, it's not unplayable, uncontrollable because of the. It's just slow. Yeah. But that it runs at all is actually quite interesting. Oh, I had this resting on my... Raiden for Overkill. I guess when it comes to titles like this, you know, like the shooters, basically the 2D bitmapped stuff, that this emulator would probably be very much okay with on the Mac Mini. Just the simpler games, and the more elaborate games with far distance drawing and a lot of effects going on, a lot of AI calculations. Those tend to struggle more when you're not running on a PlayStation that actually does all these multiple thread things. Arcade mode. Let's do the arcade mode. Start. Original. Now this is out on Windows as well, so there's actually no need. PC is Steam. There's no need to be emulating this in PlayStation 3, but yeah, this is just very playable. There's this is full speed. Control is very immediate. No lag. no additional lag, I must say, because there is of course always lag when you're using a HDMI digital display and or emulators, but yeah, it's fast enough to not have any additional lag, and it's just as fast as it would be on the original hardware. It's just different layers of software that it's actually running through, but it always fast enough not to negatively impact the experience, because otherwise I would not be able to play this at all. You know, I would not be able to avoid these buttons, and I would not be able to play this. And you can play like this. I mean, this is just like it would run on the PlayStation 3. It's just, yeah, it's just 100%. Rally to Africa. Yeah, this is one of the later PlayStation titles, and I must say this may actually not be an original package file, because yeah, it's a lot of these PlayStation 1 titles, they were PSN titles, but people have been creating their own packages, I believe, and I'm not sure which one this is. So yeah, this is actually, you have the Rally the Africa and Rally to Europe, and they don't use licensed cars, but they have like toy cars, fake. This is a fake Citroën or a fake. Yeah, so they don't use licensed cars, but it's interesting. They have a very nice way of controlling. And this, yeah, it's about as, no, it's a little less laggy than, it's actually not that laggy. And it is more, it's speedier, it's running faster than the Ridge Racer Type 4 is, but it's not full speed. It's yeah. Resogun, yeah. I mean, that's games from Housemarque are of course mandatory. This was the game to get. This Resogun Housemarque games are actually must-have titles, I find. And this probably is a 30 frames per second game. It may not run full speed because it's actually quite demanding, but we'll see. Shoot, move, bomb, overdrive.
Save the last humans.
Yeah, I believe that, yeah, this basically is a 30 frames per second title. And you basically it's like a circular defender where you deposit your humans and you keep them from being abducted or destroyed by aliens. Nice voxels, but this is running full speed with certain variances in frame time. You do notice those, but the frame rate itself is actually quite consistent. Oh, there's this critter. Let's bring it up. There you go. The overdrive is upgraded. So yeah, this works. So let's see what else works. Sega Rally Online Arcade. Now this is, yeah, there is an update available which I don't have access on right now. It's supposed to be playable for for about 2 years now, so let's run it. I did run it before. This is actually a game that uses a lot of PPUs, a lot of threads, so it's one of the more difficult games to run. A lot of 4 cores or low-end Ryzen systems would not run this full speed. You really need an i7 or something like that to be able to run it. And I think, yeah, this game would actually default to 30 frames per second, I believe. Oh yeah, and here you can actually possibly see the cores not being designed equal, probably. Let me see, the frame rate is as fast as you'd expect it to be, almost, like, oh, it's slower. You may hear a humming sound. That's actually the force feedback on the controller. But yeah, you can actually see that the textures on the road aren't fully rendered at the same time. The frame rate is a little inconsistent. When I run this without capturing with the OBS software, it actually runs full speed. But you have the same graphical glitches with the with the sometimes textures that are disappearing and textures that are just filled in or flicker. So yeah, I guess this actually is maxing out the capabilities of the M1, and possibly shows that the scheduling on the cores is not, and it was maxing out. Yeah, so that could actually be a thing. This does run on. This runs very nicely on the Hades NUC clone, which is an i7 with 4 threads, 4 cores, 8 threads. And this is one of these shooters that just runs full speed. Söldner Acts. Continue. Start game. Stage 1. Single player. Yep, and this just is pretty much perfect. So it's asteroids, it's rotating debris, like super space dust or something. Nice music. Cheerio rings. Yeah, I would classify this as a more Western shooter because of the way the bullets are not pink. He says, well, the bullets immediately turn pink. And I wanted to pick up the you can't pick up the stuff that's on the display giving out your stats. That was actually the sequel. This is the first one. Only 7 PPU modules. It compiles rather quickly, so this is actually an easier game. So a lot of the PSN titles and a lot of the indie titles will just work great. Himmelstürmer, German words, charging the sky. To storm, to run against the sky. Himmelstürmer.
The future.
Die Zukunft. The Toekomst. The future.
Consider a
Celestial planet and its moon orbit in a dust-covered solar system. Söldner X Start Single Player. Yeah. It is very similar. It's also running full speed, and now we have this tutorial thing. Yep, there's a bit of Akira going on, you know. It's like this post-apocalyptic dystopian type of thing. Like the music, like the graphics. Not my favorite shooters though. Städterennen, das ist auch ein, that is also a shooter. Städterennen, no, Städterennen. I thought Städterennen. Yeah, that sounds German, Städterennen. Aber das weiß ich nicht. Dat weet ik niet. I don't know. Compiling PPU modules. I'm quite partial to these old bitmapped graphics. Especially when they have good gameplay and the developers focus on good gameplay. And it's not like a cop-out or something, because I think it actually takes a lot more time to design very nice bitmap graphics than it takes for you to use a set of assets or create some assets in Unreal or, you know, one of the many game engines out there. This is actually quite an elaborate game with 195 PPU modules to compile, divided over 23 files. Yeah, it's actually quite interesting. If you look at the file structure of games across the PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, and PlayStation 2, not PlayStation PSP, PlayStation 3, it's actually very similar. The way it is all structured. And it may probably, the OSs will probably have a similar design. Pixel Nest Studio Production plus present Städterennen. Zander. It could be that there's German developers. Yeah, so you do see some shimmering because it's not rendering at the same resolution as the PlayStation is outputting at. Yeah, and we go into this tutorial, but this also runs full speed, but not at a consistent frame rate. There's some dips, but Super Star Soldier. Yeah, this is another TurboGrafx 16 game. There's quite a fair few of these old games available as virtual console type games. And most of them run full speed, just run full speed. Let's see. Yeah. The game runs quite well. There are slight variations in frame times. You feel them, but yeah, it's. I prefer playing this on the real hardware. This on the emulator is not like this would run on the real hardware, but it's playable. I mean, it's But yeah, you do notice the slight variations in frame times. You do. Super Stardust HD. Oh, this is also update 6. So yeah, this probably is best if you do run this with some updates in place. A lot of these PSN titles have a lot of updates. And you can find them and install them on the emulator, but I haven't, because this is just yeah, me testing it out. Oops. Yeah, there were some weird stutters. This is also a Housemarque game. It's also one of the easier to run titles, I believe. Of course, this really needs the frame times and the frame rate to be very consistent, which for the most part it is. There's just these micro stutters that appear, and if you look at the frame times, yeah, they do appear as micro stutters, whereas with the other game, the previous game, it would be a constant slight juddering, and here it's like smooth with just the odd stutter. And even when there's a lot on the screen, you actually notice it. So this is not perfect, but it's perfectly playable. And I mean, if the M1 is your only computer and you fancy some PlayStation 3, I mean, it's, yeah, you can play the game perfectly fine like this. This is good enough. Switchball, yeah, these are all playable. So we're coming close to the final few games that I wanted to try. Quite like how they use the some of the in-game graphics for the render screens, and yeah, this probably uses one of these physics engines that NVIDIA PhysX or something like that, because it's a game that depends on physics. Actually, you're this ball that has to navigate across floating structures in the sky that, for some magical reason, just are up in the sky. They're old-fashioned structures nailed together in some sort of cyberpunk fashion. I believe they are held up by jet engines and or propellers. You just navigate your path through these floating structures. You're dropped off on one end and you hop on the helicopter that flies you to the next. The music in the game is actually very nice. That's also very attractive. And yeah, it's like Marble Madness with physics, which actually is playable, contrary to Marble Madness, which looks very nice but actually isn't that playable. Let me see, are there some assets not loading in, or no, this is just us needing to be a bit more patient, I guess. Sometimes it will help, you know, if a title screen doesn't appear. Yeah, there could be some timing issues, you know, that like the game does expect a bit of code to be just ready and running, and if it's not, it just stalls. But yeah, this is probably a network type of thing that yeah, I mean, this does run. I have had this running, but for some reason it doesn't want to run. So it says it's playable, but yeah, So the last guy. This is also a very interesting title. One of the release titles. Not very difficult to run. They say that it uses satellite imagery, real satellite imagery, and basically it's an overhead game where you have to guide a huge populace to safety.
Presented by Hindustan Electronic.
And yeah, it's a very unique game. Oh, this explains strange purple light shines to the earth from space. Perhaps we have to sit through. This sounds like Indian or something like that, and I believe the developer actually is from India or an Asian country close to it. Yeah. So yeah, so this basically is a force that is set on liberating all the people that got trapped when the strange lights appeared in the sky, and it's called the United Rescue Force. And forlorn friends, that man is you. Okay, so there's of course time limits, and it shows you where the where energy cells are, where populace is, and where the escape zone is. So you're basically this vehicle that is capable of okay, and then you just navigate towards the free area, the escape zone. So yeah, I mean, it looks real because supposedly that they don't, yeah, satellite imagery was used, that these guys just don't walk towards the free zone themselves. They really do behave like lemmings, just a single soul. The little screams they do, well, and basically it goes on, and you have to evade all sorts of aliens and stuff. But yeah, it's not a game that is hard to run, but it's a nice game. It's a very interesting game. Ultratron, it's a twin stick shooter. Probably also not using a lot of threads. This also is available on Steam, so probably no use of actually running this within the emulator, because you can have a very a much more responsive version, easier to access on your PC or Mac. But yeah, still, I mean, this is quite interesting. This runs full speed. There's frame time differences aren't really noticeable. Yeah, it's very similar to Geometry Wars in a way, because you have to pick up the things that are left behind, and now you can actually you have a shop area where you can actually use the money that you earned. Oh, I can do a smart bomb. And continue. Basically just continue shooting. So there's a bit of strategy involved, when to upgrade to what, invest in defensive items or offensive items. Yeah, I mean, this just runs full speed. Xevious, that's also PS1 Classic. It's actually quite interesting to compare because the 2D games, they just run pretty much perfect, whereas the 3D games like Ridge Racer and Gran Turismo actually run a lot slower. So I suspect this actually will run full speed. Probably also with very consistent frame rates, but we'll see. Yeah. Yeah, this pretty much is... I mean, it does run consistent, the ship moves consistently. I do think that the differences in frame time and the spikes aren't actually that noticeable in this game. There is some slowdown. I just love the original, the arcade one. But this is a very nice 3D interpretation. Very basic reimagining of the Zuma. Yeah, this is also a very addictive puzzle game. We played this most on the Xbox 360 and I believe the original Xbox, yeah, also live arcade. Yeah, just because it's one of these nice same games. You basically have this set of balls that just are forever moving towards the pit, and you have to stop the balls from getting to that pit by shooting or by making these balls explode. You make them explode when 3 or more colors are combined, and you can have these wonderful combinations where you have like the whole thing imploding on itself, just because you introduce a single explosion. So yeah, you basically turn around, and I'm not sure if this array is actually visible at all times. Yeah, but basically, oops. And this is where one of these combinations occurs. This also will have a combination. This also. So yeah, it's actually very, very nice to have all sorts of combinations going on. The control is a bit, I don't know, it's a bit, it's jumping around a bit, so I guess the capturing of the stick, the sensitivity of the stick and the way it's interpreted in the game is different from with this. So I guess, oh, there's a few glitches. And this is a PlayStation Classic. This is probably one of these shooters. This also will probably work fine. Arcade hits. Yeah, this was an entire series of discs where the PlayStation would receive a ton of arcade ports, and it actually shows how Shinryu, it actually shows how capable and how much of a sprite pusher the original PlayStation actually was. Let's see, how do we start? With the circle, of course. This is not running full speed. The music is lagging a bit. Frame times are also all over the place. I mean, it's playable, but I would not choose this as a way to emulate the PlayStation 1. But that it runs and that it functions as it does, and that it actually is playable and runs full speed, although with spikes in frame times, it's actually yeah, interesting. This is a native game. This also is a shooter. Oh, Caladrius Blaze. Yeah, I believe that's also a shooter. Or an RPG. I think it's an RPG. I'm not sure. A fighting game. It really looks nice. These backdrops that the emulator uses when it compiles the PPU modules. And I just thought, well, it wouldn't be the first time that I am just, you know, trying out stuff, recording it, and discovering that it didn't record the audio or something like that. You know, it's well, then this will just not exist. I will just have done the. No, this is a shooter, I believe. This will just. No, yeah, it is a shooter. It's a fighting shooter. Now, this is just like input overload. This is very nice guitar music. And this runs very consistently. Yeah, very playable. Very nice graphics. Very typical Japanese compositions. Very epic. Castlevania-esque almost, I guess. I like the guitars. Yeah, it does slow down. It's a shame. Yeah, it does slow down quite a bit actually. Yeah. Okay, and then the last game. May again be one of these PlayStation 1 games, not sure. I think it was a shooter. No, it's an HDD game, PSN game. PlayStation 3. Sony Computer Entertainment presents. Well, something that does run at 60 frames per second, and Gamula's soft arcade game. Oh, is this a multiplayer arena game or something like that? I guess. Yeah, sort of. Yeah, Okay, well, I'm not sure what this is, but yeah. Quite interesting. So we have the PlayStation 3 emulator. It's version 0023-14064, and it's the Intel code that runs on the MacMini. And let me see, webcam. Yeah, quite a nice way to experience some more gaming than the default gaming on the Mac One. Actually, some of the performance of the PlayStation 3 emulator may have been impaired by the fact that capturing as I do right now actually takes up to almost 14% of the CPU. All the rendering is done in software with OBS. OBS is not the best software to use. Might actually be that QuickTime, using Apple QuickTime, is less demanding on the hardware, with some hardware acceleration possibly being involved. But yeah, I thought it was quite interesting just to show you some PlayStation 3 gaming, some PlayStation 1 games actually running within the PlayStation 3 emulator that actually started to work. And yeah, just you know, off the cuff, almost stream-like. I didn't dare stream this, but yeah, consider this like almost like a non-live stream with me just trying out and testing out a fair few games on the emulator. Anyways, Mark signing off. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another video soon. Ta-ta!